Welcome to Wire Guild. I'm going to do a tutorial today for a pair of earrings, and these are both beaded and chained, so you've got some movement on the bottom, which is really nice with earrings, because as you move your head around it's nice to have that little jingle and sparkle. So you're going to need some 0.8mm or 20 gauge round wire, about 18 inches of 0.4 or 26 gauge round wire, some seed beads, and about 7.5 inches of lightweight chain. The seed beads I used were 11s, I think, but any that will go onto the 20 gauge wire will do. I'm going to use black ones because I want these earrings to look sort of like very Art Deco, but whatever colour you use, multicoloured ones of these look great because they look like rainbows. So I've got my 20 gauge or 0.8mm round wire here, and I've got 4 pieces that are about 2.5 inches, which is about 7 centimetres, something like that. The longer you do them, obviously the bigger the earrings, so if you want just little ones, do them a bit shorter. If you want long ones, do them a bit longer. And then I have 2 pieces that are just over 3 inches in length, because I just need the middle wire to be a little bit longer. So I've made that a bit longer there. So let's just get this ruler out of the way now. We don't need that. And these are my little tiny seed beads. I do love these. They're great fun to use, and you just get so many in a pot, and they're not that expensive either. I do love them. Now I've got my fine 0.4mm or 26 gauge fine wire, and that's going to be holding everything in place. And I've got some lightweight chain. I don't know if you can see that quite well. Some little pieces that any lightweight chain will do. You don't want it too heavy because obviously you don't want to bring the ear down sort of with weight. So I'm going to take one of my longer ones, and 2 of my shorter ones, because of course earrings we need 2 of them, so we've got 2 pairs of those. So you've got one wire that's significantly longer. That longer wire needs to be in the middle, and we're going to take our length of finer wire, the 26 gauge or 0.4mm, and wrap it around that middle wire, and I've just gone around once in a loop and made sure that's nice and tight. Then I'm going to slide on one of the tiny little beads onto this loop. So I'm just closing the curtain here because the light's really bad, so I think that's a bit better. There we go. So what we need now is a little tiny bead, and see if it goes on. I can never find the holes in these. There we go. On it goes, and then one wire at one side, one wire at the other. These are the 2 shorter wires, and they're going either side of the bead, and our wires crossing over and going over the top of those wires. Now I'm going to go over the top and all the way around and in between. So I've got 2 bottom ones and 1 top one separate, and then I'm going to go round, down, and that one goes in between the top 2 and back. Then you can put another bead on. Now it's easier if you pull that centre wire out. I'll show you that in a minute. Let's see if I can get this on. The slipper, and when you've got a camera between you and what you're doing, you can't always see where the hole is. And I must admit, my eyes aren't as young as they used to be. Go on. No, don't want to. I'll pop that in the top for later on something thinner. There we go, that one's going to go on. So pass that down. So underneath, round its 2 wires, so the middle wire and its wire, and then underneath and round the top wire and the middle wire, and pull it nice and tight. And then I'm going to go on with another bead. You'll see immediately as you start to do this how firm this feels. As soon as you start to do it, it builds a really nice secure and quite, it's not that difficult. Sorry, it's not that easy to move it. It's nice and firm. Now obviously the more beads I put on, the larger the earring's going to be. Go on you go. So I'm going round the 2 at the bottom, and then I take the top wire underneath and round the 2 at the top. There we go. Now how many beads have I got there? 4. I'm just going to pull that middle wire out a bit. If it's protruding, it's just easier to get the little tiny seed bead on. Now if you wanted to do these multicolours, obviously you would be using different colours for each time as it's going around, and that's great. They look really pretty, but I wanted some black ones. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's have another one on. 6. Now you can do this with any size of bead. You don't need to use seed beads. You can use little 4mm beads. I wouldn't go much bigger than 4mm for earrings, but you can use the same weave. This idea of putting the beads on the central wire and wrapping your fine wire then over 2 and over 2 is it's a nice way, and it looks very effective. So I think I've got that long enough. So now I'm just going to pull my wires up to pull through, because often this won't just push down. I couldn't put the pliers against the beads and push, because they often won't move, because I've been quite tight with my finer wire wrapping it around. And I don't need much wire to stick out at the bottom. I just need enough to make some little tiny loops on the end. Let's just get those nice and straight using the bottom of the pliers. There we go. I've probably got about 1/4 of an inch, which is probably about 1/2 centimetre. Then I'm going to move to the other side. Now my middle one is much longer, and I'm going to lift that slightly so that I can get to it. I'm going to get some round nose pliers. I'm putting my round nose pliers onto that middle wire, right up by the bead. I'm just going to very carefully bend it around the pliers. Take your pliers out, go back in, move a little further round, take the pliers away. If you try and leave the pliers in, you're going to find this really difficult, so take them out, take them away, and we're bending this round to make a little tiny loop in line with those beads that we've already put in. Now let's just straighten this up and get it straight. It does take a little bit of fiddling with, and you will find that it's worth taking that little bit of extra time to get this nice and central and nice and straight. So you still want that wire in the middle, and you still want your 2 outer wires, but this loop is going to stand up. This loop is what we're going to use to hang the ear wire or the French hook from, so that it hangs in as an earring and holds that nice and tight. So once I've got that nice and straight and nice and flat, come here, go back in. Just little tiny adjustments. I'm not doing anything sort of overboard because it's only a little earring. So I've still got plenty of wire on my middle one that sticks out, and I'm going to add another bead, and then I'm going to do the same as I did on the first one. I'm pushing that bead nice and close, wrap around, come here. I'm just going to move the circle up just so that I'm not catching it. That little bead slipping about, come on. Just isn't quite in line, so I have to fiddle with it, because when the bead goes up, and now I'm just going to put a wire around above the bead. That's just going to hold that central wire in place, and then the second one will go below the bead, and then I'll do that top one again, so it's to the right of the bead. That first wrap round was really just to hold that central wire in place. So let's get that flat, get it moved up. Lovely. Now let's try another bead. Go on, in you go. There is a knack to this. You can actually use the extended wire, the one that sticks out further, and actually just go into the box and scoop one up, and you'll get a wire then coming onto it. Sorry, a bead going onto your wire, scooped up. But with the camera, I can't really do that because I can't see what I'm doing. So my wire from the top came down around 2, my wire from the bottom goes underneath round the bottom 2 and back out, and I'm just wriggling to straighten. Even when things look very, very simple to do and you've got very little there, it's almost harder to do than something complex because there is no room to hide anything. So always make sure everything's straight, everything's as neat as you can be. It's only a little pair of earrings, they're not going to take you long to make anyway, so you might as well spend an extra 10 minutes making them, you know, really, really, really neat with the wires in the right places than to think, you know what, I'm just going to rush my way through these, because you will be able to tell the difference. And if you're selling things, customers can tell the difference as well. It's amazing. If you've got a pair that you didn't really spend as much time with, let me just count those, sorry, doing two things at once. If you've got a pair that you didn't spend as much time on, guaranteed that people will go for the other pairs. So always just give it that little bit extra. So just round the back, up over the top 2 wires, round the back, in between the bottom 2 wires, so you get the middle one and the bottom one, the middle one and the top one, and another bead. Now the reason I wanted to make black ones, and the black ones are very popular, is because they end up looking very, very like Art Deco. So I'm just making sure I've got the same amount of beads on both sides. I always have to double check this, because otherwise I'll end up with one that's got too many beads on one side and it doesn't look even once you've got it finished. So I'll double check it a couple of times. Yeah, there we go. Now to finish this wire off, I'm just going to wrap around that outer wire just a couple of times. Just around 1 and 2. Nothing fancy. Just a couple of wraps around and it will just anchor that wire in place. Trim off as close as I can get, and then just over the end of the wire, and then just twist slightly, which will smooth it down onto the other wire, and wrap around the bottom one just a couple of times. There we go. And then we just trim that nice and short and smooth that end down. Now I've got a little bit too much wire and I'm going to trim that off. If you decide that, you know, you want these to be a bit longer, you could put an extra bead or an extra couple of beads on each side, and you don't need to, you know, or just use a little tiny bit less. You will find out what you need as you make them, as you prefer them. So I'm just going to trim these wires off. I'll put the pliers over the top, all the way over the top, and squeeze, and that will make a little tiny mark in the wire, so that then when I cut just one wire at a time, I'm getting to the point where I'm going to need some new snips. It won't go through all 3. So that is my, I'll move these scraps out of the way, the first one. So I've speeded it up for me doing the second one, because you can always rewind it if you want to watch me doing it slowly. But I've put the long wire in the middle, I'm adding my beads, and then I'm wrapping my finer wire around. I think when you try this you'll be quite surprised at the strength of this weave and how much it alters what is really 3 quite lightweight pieces of wire, and they do look very nice. If you like more delicate jewellery, this weave can be used in a, I don't know if you can actually see the bracelet that I'm wearing right now. I don't know if it's shown at any point during the film. Now let's just pull these wires up and get them straight again on the end, and I'm just going to show you that curl again. So I've bent up the middle wire, gripped it with my round nose pliers, and then bend around nice and slowly, pliers out, back in, get another grip, bend round, another grip, bend round, and then make it come back into line, because it will tend to sort of, whichever side you've wrapped it around, obviously it wants to move that way a little bit, so you have to make sure it is tucked. And then back to putting our beads on and doing the same wraps with the wire. I think you'll find it a really lovely weave. and the things you can do with this is phenomenal. It actually looks quite pretty if you don't even bother putting any beads in the middle. It's nice. So let's just get these on. On you go. Make sure I've got, oops, come here, same amount as I have on the other side. And once I get to that point, I will cast the wire off in the same way that I did before, by wrapping around a couple of times, trimming off and pressing down. And then I will trim all the ends, so we're down to about the same sort of, sort of quarter of an inch or so that's at the end. If you wanted to use longer wires and turn these wires into something fancy, like a little curly swirly design, you could do that just as easily. So I've got my 2 earrings. Now we need to shape them into an arch shape. You can make them, just trim these straight. Sorry, I've got 1 or 2 that are not right even, so I'm just going to take those ends off. Like I say, it's because I need new snips, they're not quite right. I just pick these little bits up and put them in my scrap pot. There we go. Even tiny bits go in the scrap pot and they go back to the bullion dealer. Right, so I need something to shape my earrings around. It doesn't matter what shape these end up being. You could go around something small and round, something oval, something square, whatever you got. Wobbers do some most amazing things. I've got some chain here, which is really, really lightweight, and that is going to go onto the loops that I'm going to make at the end. So I've got my oval wobbers, and if I just grip that, make sure that your little loop is going to the outside of the piece. We don't want that inside, that's no good. And all the way around, and it makes this gorgeous sort of horseshoe shape, which we can then use for our earrings. The beads are more easily seen from the side, which is quite nice, because as you turn your head you get this flash. So if I only had round nose pliers, I'd go onto the widest bit, and I'm underneath that loop, and I'm just gently forming around the pliers. Now you see, this is a tighter, it fits inside that one because of me using round nose pliers instead of the oval ones. So now, see, now I've got 2 different ones. Obviously you would use the same thing on both, you wouldn't be daft and use different pliers, but I can just tighten this one up now so that they match. There we go, give it a wriggle. Yeah, no, it's still a little bit fatter, isn't it? Oh well, it'll be alright. I can give it a wriggle in a minute. I'm making sure that my loop is standing nice and proud and upright on the top. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's definitely a bit bigger. Let's make that one a bit bigger. That might be easier. Open it out a little bit. Now then, let's have a look. There, that's better. Yeah. Now if you had longer ends, you could do some twirls and some twists and just have another fiddle. Earrings are fiddler. They really are. Right then, let's make sure the beads are all upwards and not slithering. They shouldn't do. There. So we're going to need some chain. Now again, this is entirely up to you how much chain you're going to use. I tend to use 3 different lengths, so I use the shortest length, which is about 1 inch, and I'm just going to put this so that it's not falling about. There we go, nice and flat. Put my chain on, take it up to the inch point, put my my snip straight down at the end of the ruler and just cut through, and then pull all the little bits off, because this is sort of like a multiple chain with 2 or 3 little links all going into each other at the same time. Now my next piece will be slightly longer. I'm just trimming these ends down again. I've got a little bit too much. Trim that down. Now I'm going to take the end one. Sorry, my hands are a little bit out of shot. and I'm just curling the wire inwards. Now this is just one wire at the front face, and I've just curled it in. Now I haven't curled it in so far that it touches, obviously, because I'm going to hang that chain from it. Let's just trim those down a little bit. There we go. So taking that first wire again and just curling inwards. Lovely. So it's just a little tiny loop on the bottom. I might have taken that one a little bit far, so I should open it up a bit. And then I'm just going to thread the chain over the edge of that loop and then close it up so it doesn't fall off, so that the wires are touching. And then the other end, come here. So I'm trying to do it so that you can see this, so my fingers don't get in the way. The other end goes over the other loop, like that. And then close up the circle so that the chain doesn't escape, and that's your first little bit of chain. Then I'm going to do the middle wire, and I need another piece of chain, so this one will be slightly longer. So I'm going to make this like 1.25 inches. It's just so that you get, instead of getting a row of 3 chains that are all the same size, it graduates towards the back of the earring, getting slightly longer. It adds a little bit of depth to the piece. So I need to make that chain out of the way and then add a little curl on the middle wire. I'm just bending the back wire out of the way a bit just so that I can get in, and bend that around in a circle. There we go. Add one end of my chain, which I can hardly see at all for the camera, so this is kind of, yep, there we go, guesswork. You don't want the chain too heavy. If you don't have any chain at all, you can leave the earrings without, or you could use the finer wire, the bits that you have left over from doing the weaving in and out, and you could use some of your tiny seed beads and make a very tiny little seed bead chain, which also looks pretty, and you get movement from it if you don't have any spare, just loose chain to use. Put that over the other end. Go on. Oh, I really wish I could see better. Go on. There are some things you just can't do so that the camera can see. You just, fingers totally get in the way. I could do with littler fingers. Alright, so that's 2. And can you see the second one slightly longer? And now we're going to do, put that down there, the last one, which I'm going to make 1.5 inches long. So each one's just like a little 1/4 inch, which is about 0.5 centimetre longer than the others. So I suppose in centimetres, the first one would be like 2.5, the second one would be 3, the third would be 3.5. I'm not very good with centimetres, I tend to revert to inches. So I'm just going to put that curl now in my back wire, and the same on the other side. So I'm curling inwards each time, and let's pop that chain. Go on. Oh, you are fiddly. Right, let's just close that loop up so it doesn't fall off and then I have to do it again. Fiddly they may be, but they're definitely worth it. People do love earrings. They adore them. You'll often find that some ladies just don't want to buy any other type of jewellery. They just want earrings. And they want different earrings to go with, you know, different outfits, and it's just one of those things that people love to buy. Come here. Go on that little loop. On you go. Yay. Now let's close that loop up. Nice and tight. Neaten them up so they're straight. And that is our first beaded and chained earring. Now I am just tightening those loops so they lie straight, putting the pliers on over the top, and I'm going to twist that ever so slightly. What I'm not really angling the beads, I am just moving it so that if anything the beads are more noticeable from the front than they would be from the back. They still sit mainly to the side, but it's just to give that extra vision at the front. There we go. Now I'm going to do exactly the same with the other earring. I've trimmed the edges down, I've curled all 3 wires together, which is a bit naughty, and I've got my 3 pieces of chain which I will add on to the earring. If you're feeling adventurous, you could add the tiny thin wire that we use for the beading and some chain and dangle more beads off it. It depends how big you like your earrings, but using this basic framework gives you a nice strong frame to work on and to build from that, which is really what we're trying to do here. I'm trying to give you the ideas and the basis for you then to sort of move on further, bring in your own imagination and your own ideas on what you would like to put. I can't get that piece of chain on, it does not want to go on. Let me just close that. There we go. We can close that loop up and make the wire go through. Do remember though with earrings that they can be made, if you're not, I've used sterling silver and fine silver here. If you're not using sterling or fine silver, if you're using plate, it may be worthwhile actually using a solid silver ear wire, or making your own, which is what I'm going to do here. Now there is a tutorial in the skill set section that shows you how to make ear wires or French hooks, but I'm just going to do a quick one here. So I've just 2 inches of wire, curled it around. That little curl there is what will attach to the top of the earring. Make sure that's straight. Do the same to the other one. There we go. If you want to add a bit more dimension to these, because it's round wire, what you can do is you can take a steel block, I'm afraid mine's a bit rusty, and you can just bash that little loop that you've just made so that it's nice and flat. And the same with the other one. Come here, and I'm just going to bash that. I've taken the sound of me hammering out because it really is quite loud and sharp. So down to the loop, and I'm going to bend the wire slightly towards me, and then I will put the pliers back on again and bend back and down. It just gives it a more sort of curved, sinuous shape. Really any shape, as long as that curve is going through your ear, and you've got a straightish piece of wire that you can poke into the piercing. Ear wires can be any shape you want them to be. Now I'm just going to tap down the piece, the curve that would actually go through your ear, so that's nice and flat. There we go. It strengthens it as well. Hammering the wire tempers it, work hardens it, and gives it a little bit more strength. So 0.8 is probably quite substantial to make ear wires, but a little bit of hammering just gives them a bit more firmness. So I'm just going to open up that loop that I made, and I will open that to the side. I won't sort of unravel it, I'll just move it to the side. Pop the little central loop of our earrings. Let's move that out of the way. It does weigh a ton as well, does that? Out of the way. There we go. If you don't have a steel block like that, anything firm that you can hammer against, you know, lump of wood, anything flat. There we go. Now just straighten that back up after I bent it. There we go. Nice and neat, nice and tight. There. If you want, you could also add some of the seed beads to the actual the ear wires that you're making, so they match in with the earrings. Then you'd have a straight line of beads going up along the ear wire, so we'll just add that one. Make sure you don't get them the wrong way round. We've got the shortest wire to the front and the behave, the longest wire to the back. Let's just straighten that to hook. Make it nice and flat, make it nice and tight. Last thing you want is somebody ringing you up saying, you made me earrings, I've lost one. And there we go. A pair of earrings with pretty little seed beads, and then chains at the bottom for movement. You might need to file just a touch at the end, unless you've got one of these really cool bead smoother end cap things. They're really cool. I must get myself one of those and have a go with that. Just to make sure there's no sharp bits on your end. So a really nice pretty pair of beaded and chained earrings. I hope you enjoyed that one. Thank you so much for watching. Happy wrapping!